I'm Jessica, 29, and last month I walked into my own apartment to find 30 strangers celebrating my sister's pregnancy. The apartment I worked overtime to afford. The home I spent weekends decorating. All while nobody even bothered to invite me to the party happening in my own living room. My mother's explanation? They needed a nice venue. If you're watching this, drop a comment letting me know where you're from. Don't forget to like and subscribe as I share how I went from being a doormat to finally standing up for myself against my own family. Growing up as the middle child in my family was like being the invisible bridge between two spotlight-hogging islands. My older sister Amanda, now 32, was always the golden child in our household. From her straight-A report cards that earned a place on the refrigerator to her countless dance recital trophies that dominated our living room shelves, Amanda could do no wrong in my mother's eyes. My mother, Diane, now 54, built her entire identity around being Amanda's biggest cheerleader. When Amanda wanted piano lessons, my mother worked extra shifts to pay for them. When Amanda needed a new dress for prom, my mother spent an entire weekend driving to every mall within 50 miles to find the perfect one. Meanwhile, I wore hand-me-downs and taught myself to play guitar using YouTube tutorials. Our family dynamic shifted dramatically when my father Robert passed away from a sudden heart attack when I was 16. Dad had been my buffer, the one person who seemed to notice me. He'd slip me encouraging notes in my lunchbox and always made time to listen to my stories about school. With him gone, the imbalance in our family became even more pronounced. We weren't wealthy by any means, living in a modest 3-bedroom home in suburban Chicago. My parents had worked hard to provide us with a stable middle-class life, my father as an accountant and my mother as a part-time receptionist at a dental office. After Dad died, money became tighter. But somehow there was always enough for whatever Amanda needed. I decided early on that the only person I could rely on was myself. While Amanda had her college education fully funded by our parents and a generous contribution from our grandparents, I cobbled together scholarships, student loans, and worked 20 hours a week at the campus coffee shop to put myself through school. I still remember the nights I spent in the library, exhausted after a shift, trying to keep my eyes open long enough to finish a paper while Amanda posted photos of her sorority parties on social media. After graduation, I landed an entry-level position at a marketing firm in Chicago. I lived in a tiny studio apartment with a roommate, ate ramen noodles more often than I care to admit, and worked 60-hour weeks to prove myself. Every promotion felt like a personal victory, each raise a testament to my perseverance. 4 years of sacrifices finally paid off when I was able to put a down payment on my own apartment in Lakeview. A 1-bedroom with a small balcony and enough natural light to fill it with plants. It wasn't extravagant, but it was mine, paid for with my own hard-earned money. Meanwhile, Amanda followed a different path. She married Derek, a financial advisor from a wealthy family. Shortly after college, they bought a 4-bedroom house in the suburbs with help from his parents. Amanda had never held a full-time job, instead focusing on what she called her lifestyle brand Instagram account that featured her perfect home, perfect wardrobe, and now her perfect pregnancy. Throughout our lives, Amanda had developed a habit of taking my belongings without asking. My favorite sweater would disappear from my closet, only to show up in her Instagram posts. My carefully saved makeup would be half empty when returned. Even my diary wasn't safe from her prying eyes. When confronted, she'd shrug and say, "We're sisters, what's the big deal?" As if sharing blood gave her unlimited access to everything I owned. Our mother, Diane, enabled this behavior at every turn. "You know how Amanda is," she'd say with a dismissive wave. "She just gets excited about things. Don't be so selfish." Or my personal favorite, "You need to be the bigger person, Jessica. Amanda is more sensitive than you are." This refrain became so familiar that I could recite it in my sleep. I tried multiple times to establish boundaries with my family. Once I even convinced them to attend family therapy, thinking a professional might help them understand my perspective. The therapist did try, bless her heart, but after 3 sessions, Amanda declared it too negative and my mother agreed. I had several heart-to-heart conversations with my mother, trying to explain how her favoritism affected me. "I love you both equally," she'd insist. Moments before calling Amanda to ask about her day while I sat across from her at the dinner table. As the years passed, I learned to lower my expectations. I showed up for family gatherings, brought thoughtful gifts for holidays, and listened to hours of Amanda-centric conversations. I celebrated her engagement, attended her lavish wedding, and even helped my mother plan the baby shower for Amanda's first pregnancy announcement. A shower I would later discover wasn't actually the only one. The resentment grew inside me like a slow-building storm, but I pushed it down, telling myself that family was family. I focused instead on building my own life, creating a circle of friends who valued me, excelling at my career, and turning my apartment into the sanctuary I never had growing up. Little did I know that even this private space wasn't safe from my family's disregard for my boundaries. The day it happened started as one of those monumentally terrible workdays that make you question your career choices. I had spent weeks preparing for a presentation to a potential high-profile client, a national retail chain that would double our agency's revenue if we landed the account. Everything that could go wrong did. The projector died halfway through my slides. The client's marketing director interrupted every other sentence with skeptical questions. To top it off, someone had spilled coffee on my portfolio right before the meeting, leaving me scrambling to print new copies that came out with streaks of black toner across the page. By 5:30 p.m., I was emotionally drained and physically exhausted. My boss had pulled me aside afterward to tell me I had done my best under the circumstances, which in corporate speak translates to not good enough. All I wanted was to go home, pour a glass of wine, sink into my comfortable couch, and watch mindless reality TV until I could forget the day had ever happened. As I turned onto my street, I noticed something unusual. The parking spaces, normally half empty on a Thursday evening, were completely filled. Cars lined both sides of the street, some parked haphazardly as if their drivers had been in a hurry. I had to circle the block twice before finding a spot 3 blocks away from my building. Walking toward my apartment, I could hear music growing louder with each step. The cheerful notes of what sounded like a party playlist drifted down from somewhere above. A sick feeling began to form in the pit of my stomach as I realized the music was coming from my floor, my section of the building. When I reached my door, the sound was unmistakable. Dozens of voices chattering, laughing, and singing along to the music coming from inside my apartment. For a moment, I stood frozen, key in hand, wondering if I had somehow gone to the wrong unit. But no, 3B was definitely my apartment. I inserted my key with trembling hands and pushed the door open to a scene that made me question my sanity. My modest living room was packed with people, women of various ages holding plastic cups, gathered in small clusters around my furniture. Pink and blue balloons floated against my ceiling. A banner reading Amanda's baby shower hung across the bookshelf where I kept my most treasured novels and photographs. In the center of it all stood my sister, Amanda, her 7-month pregnant belly draped in a flowing white maternity dress, accepting gifts from a circle of admiring guests. My mother, Diane, bustled around my kitchen, pulling what appeared to be mini quiches from my oven and arranging them on my serving platters, the ones I had received as a housewarming gift and saved for special occasions. The scene before me was so surreal that for several seconds, I couldn't move or speak. I stood in the doorway, clutching my work bag, as strangers filled every corner of my personal space. My coffee table had been pushed against the wall to make room for a pile of wrapped presents that reached waist-high. Someone had moved my collection of succulents from the windowsill to the floor, where a few looked knocked over, soil spilling onto the hardwood. It took nearly a full minute before anyone noticed me standing there. A woman I didn't recognize gave me a curious look before turning to whisper to her friend. Like a slow ripple, awareness of my presence spread through the room until the chatter dimmed slightly. Amanda looked up from the baby clothes she was admiring and made eye contact with me. Instead of embarrassment or apology, her expression showed only mild annoyance at the interruption. "Oh, you're home early," she said, as if I had somehow intruded on her plans rather than the other way around. "Early," I managed to choke out, my voice barely audible over the music still playing from my Bluetooth speaker. "This is my apartment. What's happening here?" My mother appeared then, weaving through the crowd with a plate of hors d'oeuvres. "Jessica, we didn't expect you until later. You usually work late on Thursdays." The casual way she said it, as if they had been monitoring my schedule to plan this invasion, sent a chill through me. "We needed a nice venue for Amanda's shower," my mother continued, lowering her voice as she reached me. "Your place is so much more photogenic than mine, and Amanda wanted somewhere special. You're throwing a baby shower in my apartment and didn't invite me." Each word felt like glass in my throat. The music suddenly seemed too loud, the room too crowded. A few guests nearest to us began shifting uncomfortably, some making excuses to move to other parts of the room. Others were picking up their purses, clearly sensing the tension and wanting to escape. It was supposed to be a surprise. Amanda called from her seat, though her tone suggested it was an excuse fabricated on the spot. A surprise party? In my own home? That I wasn't invited to? I repeated slowly, trying to process the absurdity of her claim. A middle-aged woman I didn't know touched my arm. You must be the sister. I'm Linda, Amanda's mother-in-law. Your apartment is just lovely. She spoke with the forced cheerfulness of someone trying to defuse a bomb. I noticed then that not a single person had been introduced to me as Amanda's sister. These people, at least 30 strangers, had been in my home for who knows how long, using my bathroom, touching my belongings, eating food prepared in my kitchen. And none of them knew the apartment belonged to a person who wasn't even invited to the celebration. The realization struck me like a physical blow. I wasn't just uninvited, I was erased. This was the ultimate statement about my place in my family's lives. A prop, a convenience, a resource to be used when needed and ignored when not. As the uncomfortable silence stretched, more guests began making their exits, murmuring awkward thanks to Amanda and my mother. Some gave me sympathetic glances as they squeezed past me in the doorway. Others avoided eye contact altogether. Within 15 minutes, the crowd had thinned considerably, leaving mostly family members and close friends of Amanda who were helping collect gifts and leftover food. Not once during this exodus did my mother or sister apologize. Instead, they acted as if I was causing a scene by merely existing in my own home. The audacity of it left me speechless. Standing in my entryway watching strangers handle my possessions with the casual entitlement that had defined my family relationships for as long as I could remember. As the last guests filtered out with awkward goodbyes and averted gazes, the full impact of what had happened began to settle over my apartment like a heavy fog. No one, not a single person, offered to help clean up the disaster zone that had once been my carefully curated living space. Empty plastic cups littered every surface. Crumbs and dropped food ground into my area rug. Gift wrap and ribbons scattered across the floor like colorful confetti. The damage went beyond mere mess. A red wine stain bloomed across my cream-colored couch cushion. The couch I had saved for 6 months to buy. Deep scratches marred my coffee table where someone had apparently used it as a cutting surface without a protective mat. And there, lying in pieces by the bookshelf, was the hand-blown glass butterfly my father had given me for my 16th birthday, just months before he died. It was the last gift he ever gave me. I picked up the broken pieces with trembling hands as Amanda collapsed dramatically onto my damaged couch, her feet, still in heels, propped on my coffee table. Well, that was awkward. She sighed, scrolling through her phone. You could have texted that you were coming home early. My mother emerged from the kitchen, purse in hand. Really, Jessica? Your timing could have been better. The party was almost over anyway. I stared at them, the broken glass fragments cool against my palm. My timing? In my own home? Are you serious right now? We thought you wouldn't mind, my mother said with that familiar dismissive wave. You're always saying we should spend more time together as a family. Together? As a family, I repeated. Not you using my home while excluding me. Amanda rolled her eyes. You're overreacting. It's not like we broke anything. I opened my palm to show the shattered butterfly. This was from Dad. For a brief moment, something like shame flickered across my mother's face, but Amanda merely shrugged. That old thing? It was probably an accident. Besides, this shower is for my baby, your future niece or nephew. Don't you want to be supportive? There it was, the trump card. Any objection I raised would be reframed as me being unsupportive of her pregnancy, probably jealous, definitely selfish. How exactly am I supposed to be supportive of an event I wasn't even told about? I asked, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. You literally threw a party in my home and didn't invite me. We were going to clean up, my mother interjected, though neither of them had made any move to do so. And we brought our own food. That you cooked in my kitchen, served on my dishes, and spilled on my furniture, I pointed out. It's just stuff, Jessica, Amanda said. God, you've always been so materialistic. I felt a laugh bubble up. A slightly hysterical sound that surprised even me. Materialistic. I, who had worked for everything I owned while Amanda had been given everything on a silver platter. I think you both need to leave, I said quietly, the calm in my voice belying the storm inside me. Now you're kicking us out? Amanda's voice rose to a pitch that made my neighbors surely take notice. I'm 7 months pregnant. Yes, I'm aware. The banner across my bookshelf made that pretty clear. My mother stepped between us, always the peacemaker when it served Amanda's interests. Let's all calm down. Jessica, you've had a long day at work. We've had the excitement of the shower. Everyone's tired. I'm beyond tired, I admit it. I'm hurt. I'm violated. I feel like I don't even matter to either of you except when you need something from me. That's not true. My mother insisted, though her eyes slid away from mine. We're family. Family respects each other. Family doesn't break into each other's homes. We didn't break in, Amanda interrupted. We used the spare key you gave Mom for emergencies. That stung even more the knowledge that they had used my trust against me. Well, consider this the last emergency that key will ever serve. I moved to the door and held it open. Please leave. Now. Amanda heaved herself up with an exaggerated groan. Come on, Mom. Jessica clearly needs some time to get over herself. My mother gathered her things, pausing at the door. We'll talk when you've calmed down. Don't make this bigger than it needs to be. After they left, I closed the door and leaned against it, surveying the wreckage of my home. It was then that I noticed my bedroom door ajar, a door I always kept closed. Inside, coats were piled on my bed, someone's lipstick had stained my white duvet. And my dresser drawers were slightly open, contents disturbed as if someone had been rifling through them. The violation of my most private space broke something in me. I sank to the floor of my bedroom and allowed myself to cry, really cry, for the first time in years. Then, with tears still drying on my face, I began the long process of cleaning up. Working until 3 in the morning to restore some semblance of order to my home. As I scrubbed wine from my couch cushions, I found a pacifier someone had dropped. While vacuuming the rug, I discovered a gift tag with "To Amanda" from Melissa, written in flowery script. Each item was a reminder of the strangers who had invaded my space. This would be the last time my family treated me as an afterthought. Something had to change. The next morning, I called in sick to work for the first time in over 2 years. My boss, Catherine, was surprised but didn't question it. Perhaps she sensed from my voice that I was hanging by a thread. I spent the day moving listlessly around my apartment, unable to settle. Though everything was clean again, it didn't feel like mine anymore. I kept seeing phantom guests in my peripheral vision, hearing echoes of their laughter. Every time I sat on my couch, I thought about Amanda lounging there accepting gifts. My kitchen felt contaminated somehow, as if my mother's presence had rewound time and placed me back in her house, under her rules. I couldn't even enjoy my morning coffee routine. The sanctity of that small pleasure had been disrupted along with everything else. The worst part was the flashbacks. As I tried to reclaim my space, memories from childhood kept surfacing. Amanda wearing my new sweater to school before I had even removed the tags. My mother giving Amanda my concert tickets because she had a bad day. Finding pages torn from my journal pasted into Amanda's scrapbook as inspiration. Each memory reinforced a pattern I had normalized for so long that I hadn't recognized how toxic it truly was. By afternoon, I couldn't bear to be alone with my thoughts anymore. I called my best friend, Tara, who had known me since college and understood my family dynamics better than anyone. "They did what?" she exclaimed after I explained what had happened. "In your apartment? Without inviting you? Jessica, that's not just rude. That's psychologically messed up." Her validation loosened something in my chest. Am I overreacting? They made me feel like I was being dramatic. "Gaslighting 101, Tara said firmly. They violated your space, excluded you from a family event, damaged your property, and then made you feel bad for having feelings about it. That's emotional abuse, Jess." "Abuse seems like a strong word." I hedged. The lifetime of conditioning making me defend them even now. What would you say if I told you my boyfriend came into my apartment without permission, threw a party without inviting me, broke my stuff and then got mad at me for being upset? She had me there. I'd tell you to dump him immediately. Exactly. Look, I know they're family. But this is beyond normal family boundary issues. Have you thought about talking to someone professional about this? I hadn't, but once Tara suggested it, it seemed obvious. She recommended her own therapist, Dr. Martinez, who miraculously had an opening the following day due to a cancellation. Dr. Martinez's office was nothing like the sterile, clinical space I had imagined. Warm colors, comfortable furniture, and a small fountain created an atmosphere of calm that made my shoulders drop the moment I walked in. Dr. Martinez herself, a woman in her early 50s with kind eyes and a direct manner, listened intently as I recounted not just the baby shower incident, but the lifetime of similar, if less dramatic, boundary violations that had preceded it. What you're describing is a family system with very rigid roles, she explained after I finished. Your sister is cast as the central character. Your mother is her supporter, and you as the accommodator, the one expected to bend and adjust to maintain harmony. So I'm the family doormat, I said with a bitter laugh. I prefer to think of it as being assigned the role of shock absorber, Dr. Martinez said. And you've been absorbing shocks for a very long time, haven't you? That simple question broke something open inside me. I found myself describing incidents I hadn't thought about in years, times when my needs had been sacrificed for Amanda's wants. When my achievements had been downplayed while hers were celebrated, when my boundaries had been treated as suggestions rather than lines not to be crossed. Jessica, what happened in your apartment wasn't just about a baby shower, Dr. Martinez said gently. It was the most recent and perhaps most dramatic expression of a message you've been receiving your entire life. That your space, both physical and emotional, is less important than your sister's desires. So what do I do now? I asked, feeling both validated and overwhelmed. You begin by acknowledging that your feelings are legitimate. You have every right to be angry, hurt, and resentful. Those emotions are trying to tell you something important. Your boundaries matter. For homework, Dr. Martinez suggested I start journaling about my family interactions, looking for patterns and noting my emotional responses without judgment. That night, I opened a new notebook and began writing. Once I started, I couldn't stop. Pages filled with memories, incidents large and small that had shaped my relationship with my family. I wrote about the time Amanda had borrowed my car without asking and returned it with an empty gas tank and a dented fender, only for my mother to suggest I was being petty for wanting her to pay for repairs. I recalled how my college graduation dinner had turned into a celebration of Amanda's new job, which she'd quit 2 weeks later. I detailed the Christmas when my carefully chosen gifts for everyone sat unopened while Amanda's last-minute gas station purchases were exclaimed over. The pattern was undeniable, painful to see laid out in black and white. But alongside the hurt, something else was growing: anger. Not the hot, reactive kind that flares and dies, but a steady, smoldering conviction that I deserved better. That I had always deserved better. 3 nights after the shower, I woke at 3 a.m. with absolute clarity. The problem wasn't that I hadn't communicated my boundaries clearly enough. The problem was that I had allowed their violation repeatedly without consequences. I had trained my family to disregard my needs by accepting their behavior time after time. If I wanted different results, I would need different actions. Not just words. Not just another heart-to-heart conversation that would be forgotten by the next family gathering. I needed to demonstrate through actions that my boundaries were non-negotiable. I fell back asleep with that resolution firmly in mind, and for the first time since coming home to a house full of strangers, I slept soundly through the night. The next morning, I woke with purpose. Before even making coffee, I took out my phone and began photographing the damage that remained from the baby shower. The faint wine stain on my couch that professional cleaning might or might not remove, the scratches on my wooden coffee table, the scuff marks on the wall where someone had apparently dragged something heavy. I documented everything methodically, like gathering evidence for a case I was building, which in a way I was. Next, I researched cleaning services and furniture repair, collecting estimates for fixing what could be fixed and replacing what couldn't. The total came to just over $800, not an insignificant amount, but the money wasn't really the point. This was about establishing that actions have consequences. With my documentation complete, I tried calling both my mother and Amanda. Neither answered, which didn't surprise me. I sent text messages next. We need to talk about the damage from the party. Please call me back. Amanda responded almost immediately. Can't talk now. Baby is kicking like crazy. So blessed. 2 hearts. My mother's reply came an hour later. Let's not dwell on negativity. Families should support each other. Their responses were so predictable that they might have been scripted. Neither acknowledged the issue or expressed any remorse. They were following the established family pattern: ignore, deflect, make Jessica feel guilty for having expectations. Not this time. The family group chat, which included several aunts and cousins, suddenly became active with messages about Amanda's shower. Photos were shared showing smiling guests in my living room, gift opening, and cake cutting. No one mentioned that it was my apartment or that I wasn't there. The narrative being constructed was clear. It had been a perfect day celebrating Amanda. Such a beautiful shower, wrote my Aunt Patricia. Amanda was glowing, added my cousin Rachel. My Uncle Thomas, always a bit oblivious, asked, "Whose apartment was that? So nicely decorated." Before anyone could respond, I typed, "It was my apartment. The party was held without my knowledge or permission while I was at work." The chat went silent for a full 5 minutes before exploding with messages. Some expressed shock, others disbelief. My mother quickly jumped in with damage control. "There seems to be some confusion. Jessica knew about our plans but had to work. We're so grateful she let us use her lovely space." It was a blatant lie, but it achieved its purpose of muddying the waters. Family members began taking sides, most assuming my mother's version was correct, a few expressing that using someone's home without them present seemed odd regardless of whether I had known. I didn't engage further in the group chat. Instead, I drafted a formal email to both my mother and Amanda, with the subject line, "Damages from unauthorized use of my apartment." The email listed each item damaged, attached the photos and repair estimates, and requested payment within 30 days. My tone was professional and detached, as if writing to tenants who had violated a lease agreement. I concluded with, "Additionally, I want to make it clear that any future visits to my home must be arranged in advance and agreed upon by me. The spare key I provided for emergencies has been misused and will no longer be valid after this week." Their responses came in quick succession. Amanda called me petty and jealous of her happiness. My mother was more strategic, expressing disappointment that I would put a price tag on family love and suggesting that my materialistic focus was concerning. Neither mentioned paying for the damages. Neither acknowledged the boundary violation. Both attempted to position me as the villain in their narrative. I had anticipated this reaction and was prepared for it. That afternoon, I called a locksmith and scheduled an appointment for the following day. The cost, $275 for changing the locks and providing new keys, was added to my mental tally of what this incident had cost me, both financially and emotionally. While waiting for the locksmith, I researched tenant rights in my state. As I owned my apartment, I had every legal right to change the locks. I also looked into security cameras for the entryway, not because I expected my family to try breaking in, but because the violation of my space had left me feeling vulnerable in ways I hadn't anticipated. The locksmith, a grandfatherly man named Frank, didn't ask questions about why I needed the locks changed, but offered reassurance anyway. "New locks, new peace of mind," he said as he worked. "Everyone deserves to feel secure in their own home." Those simple words of validation from a stranger nearly brought me to tears. By the time Frank left, I held 2 new keys in my hand, symbols of the boundaries I was finally enforcing. That evening, I devoted myself to reclaiming my space. I deep-cleaned every surface again, rearranged the furniture to create a new layout, and ordered a replacement area rug that would arrive in a few days. I burned sage, a gift from Tara, who swore it cleared negative energy. Whether it was the sage or simply the act of intentionally refreshing my space, the apartment began to feel like mine again. I ordered a small indoor security camera that would alert my phone if motion was detected when I wasn't home. The purchase wasn't motivated by paranoia, but by a desire for control over my environment that had been shaken by the invasion. As I worked, I realized I was engaging in more than practical home maintenance. This was a ritual of reclamation, taking back what had been taken from me. Each cleaned surface, each rearranged item was an affirmation. This is my space. My boundaries matter. I matter. 3 days after changing my locks, I received a text from my mother. "We're coming by at 2 to talk. Amanda has something to say to you." Not, "Can we come by?" or "Are you available?" Just an announcement of their intentions, as if my schedule and preferences were irrelevant. The old me would have rearranged my day to accommodate them. The new me typed back, "I have plans at 2. I can meet you at the coffee shop downstairs at 4 if that works for you." My mother's response was immediate and predictable. "Amanda needs to rest her feet in the afternoon. We'll come at 11 instead." I had an important meeting at work that couldn't be rescheduled. I'm not available until 4. The coffee shop, or we can try for another day. After several back-and-forth messages, they reluctantly agreed to meet at the coffee shop at 4:30. Setting and maintaining this simple boundary felt like a victory, small but significant. At 4:15, I arrived at Cornerstone Coffee, the shop on the ground floor of my building, and selected a table near the back, private enough for conversation but public enough to discourage dramatic scenes. I ordered a latte and waited, using breathing techniques Dr. Martinez had taught me to manage the anxiety bubbling in my chest. At 4:35, I saw them through the window. Amanda waddling with the exaggerated gait she'd adopted since her pregnancy began to show. My mother hovering protectively at her side. They stopped at the entrance, Amanda pointing up toward my apartment. I could read her lips saying, "Let's just go up," and my mother shaking her head, gesturing toward the coffee shop. The moment they entered, I knew they had tried to access my apartment first. The irritation on Amanda's face and the confusion on my mother's confirmed it. They had expected their old key to work. "The elevator is out of order," my mother announced as they reached my table, crafting an excuse for their attempted end run around our agreed meeting place. "No, it isn't," I replied calmly. "I just used it to come down." Amanda lowered herself into a chair with a dramatic sigh. "Why did we have to meet in a public place? I can barely fit in these tiny chairs." "Because I wanted to meet here," I said simply. "Would you like something to drink?" My treat. This small act of assertiveness, choosing the location and sticking to it, set the tone for the conversation. My mother ordered a tea, and Amanda asked for a complicated frozen drink with specific modifications. As we waited for their orders, an uncomfortable silence settled over the table. "So," my mother finally said, "this has all gotten out of hand. We're here to clear the air." I nodded but said nothing, waiting for what would come next. Dr. Martinez had suggested this technique, creating space for them to fill rather than rushing to smooth things over as I typically did. "Amanda has something she wants to say," my mother prompted, nudging my sister. Amanda rolled her eyes slightly but put on what I recognized as her apology face, a look of practiced contrition she'd perfected as a teenager when forced to apologize for taking my things. "I'm sorry you were upset about the shower," she said, emphasizing "you" in a way that made it clear this was about my reaction, not her actions. With the pregnancy hormones. I guess I wasn't thinking clearly. You know how it is. I didn't, of course, but that wasn't the point. "Thank you for acknowledging that," I said carefully. "But I need to be clear about something. What upset me wasn't just that you had a party. It was that you entered my home without permission, used it without asking, excluded me from an event in my own space, damaged my property, and then acted like I was wrong for being upset." My mother jumped in before Amanda could respond. "No one excluded you. You were at work. We couldn't exactly wait until you were available. Amanda's schedule with the pregnancy is very tight." "Then perhaps another venue would have been appropriate," I suggested. "One belonging to someone who is actually invited to the shower." "You're being very cold," my mother said, her voice dropping to the whisper she used when she wanted to express maximum disappointment. "After everything we've been through as a family, to focus on material things and technicalities." "Boundaries aren't technicalities," I interrupted, surprising both them and myself. "They're expressions of respect. And respect isn't optional in healthy relationships." Amanda's face darkened. "So now you're saying our relationship isn't healthy? Because of one little misunderstanding?" "It wasn't a misunderstanding," I said firmly. "You knowingly entered my home without permission, held an event without inviting me, damaged my property, and have shown no genuine remorse. And yes, that reflects an unhealthy dynamic, one that's existed for a long time." I placed a folder on the table and slid it toward them. "This contains photos of the damage and estimates for repairs. The total comes to $837.42. I've also included the cost of changing my locks, which was necessary after my trust was violated." "You changed the locks?" My mother's shock seemed genuine. "Jessica, that's extremely hurtful. We're family." "Yes, we are. And families should respect each other's boundaries more scrupulously than strangers, not less." Amanda pushed the folder away without opening it. "I'm not paying for any of this. This is insane. I'm about to have a baby and you're sending me bills? What kind of sister does that?" "The kind who's finally standing up for herself," I replied. maintaining eye contact despite the tremor in my voice. I'm not asking for anything unreasonable. Actions have consequences. Damaging someone's property means taking responsibility for fixing it. We didn't damage anything on purpose, my mother protested. Intent doesn't erase impact, I said, quoting Dr. Martinez. If I accidentally rear-end someone's car, I still have to pay for repairs regardless of whether I meant to hit them. The conversation continued in circles for nearly an hour. They attempted every familiar tactic: guilt, minimization, emotional manipulation, outright denial. Amanda invoked her pregnancy repeatedly, suggesting my stress was harmful to the baby. My mother implied that my father would be disappointed in my hardened heart. In the past, any one of these approaches would have worked to make me back down. This time I held firm. When I realized we were no longer making progress, I calmly gathered my things. I love you both, I said, and meant it despite everything. But love doesn't mean allowing myself to be disrespected. I won't be available for further discussion until the damages are addressed and a sincere apology, one that acknowledges the actual boundary violation, is offered. As I stood to leave, Amanda called after me, her voice raised enough that nearby customers turned to look. You're choosing things over family. I always knew you were selfish, but this is a new low. I didn't respond, didn't turn back. Walking away from that table was one of the hardest things I'd ever done, but also one of the most empowering. The fallout was swift and extensive. Within hours, my phone was blowing up with messages from extended family. My Aunt Patricia called to tell me I was breaking your mother's heart. My cousin Rachel texted that I was being cruel to a pregnant woman. My Uncle Thomas, bless him, simply asked if I was okay and if there was anything he could do to help mediate. To my surprise, not everyone took Amanda's side. My father's sister, Aunt Margot, who had always kept a careful distance from my mother's dramatics, called to say she was proud of me for finally drawing a line. My cousin Ethan, who had his own complicated history with family boundary violations, sent a supportive text. About time someone stood up to the golden child. Stay strong. The most unexpected ally emerged in my late father's best friend, Michael, who reached out after hearing about the situation from Aunt Margot. Your dad always worried that Amanda and your mom were too hard on you, he told me during a long phone conversation. He would be proud of you for advocating for yourself. He always said you were the strong one. Those words were a balm to my soul, a connection to the parent who had seen me clearly and loved me unconditionally. At work, the ongoing family drama took its toll. I found myself distracted during meetings, checking my phone compulsively for messages and losing sleep over angry family emails. My boss, Catherine, noticed the change in my performance and called me into her office. Rather than reprimanding me, she asked what was wrong. To my horror, I burst into tears, something I had never done in a professional setting. Between sobs, I explained the situation. Catherine listened without judgment, then shared that she had gone through something similar with her own sister years ago. Take this from someone who's been there, she said. Standing up for yourself feels terrible in the moment, but living your whole life as someone else's doormat feels worse in the long run. Her understanding gave me the space to channel my experiences into my work in unexpected ways. When a client needed a campaign about personal space for a home security company, I found myself contributing insights that made the messaging unusually compelling and authentic. My personal pain became professional perspective, a transformation that surprised and empowered me. 3 months passed. Spring turned to summer. The trees outside my apartment window leafed out fully, casting dappled shadows across my newly arranged living room. I had settled into a new normal, limited contact with my mother and sister, continued therapy with Dr. Martinez, and a growing sense of peace with my decisions. The apartment truly felt like mine again. The new area rug, in a bolder pattern than I would have chosen before, brightened the space. The security camera gave me peace of mind. Most importantly, I no longer felt that flicker of anxiety when my phone rang or when someone knocked on the door. My mother had made several attempts to restore peace without addressing the actual issues I'd raised. Each time, I gently but firmly repeated my conditions: acknowledgement of the boundary violation, a genuine apology, and payment for damages. Each time, she retreated into hurt feelings and vague accusations about my changed personality. Amanda had maintained radio silence except for passive-aggressive social media posts about toxic people and choosing joy over negativity. I had muted her accounts for my own mental health but occasionally heard updates through family members who hadn't taken sides. Then on an ordinary Tuesday, I received a letter, an actual paper letter, in my mailbox. I recognized Amanda's handwriting on the envelope immediately, and my heart rate quickened. Inside was a 3-page handwritten note and a check for the exact amount I had requested for damages. Dear Jessica, the letter began, 2 days ago, I gave birth to your niece, Lily Elizabeth. Holding her in my arms for the first time, I was overwhelmed with love, but also with the terrifying responsibility of raising her to be a good person. I suddenly understood, in a way I never had before, how my actions will shape who she becomes. The letter continued, detailing how becoming a mother had forced Amanda to reflect on her own childhood and the dynamics in our family. She acknowledged with surprising insight the pattern of entitlement she had benefited from and perpetuated. The baby shower was inexcusable, she wrote. We invaded your space, excluded you from a celebration you should have been part of, damaged your belongings, and then made you feel crazy for being upset. There's no justification for that kind of disrespect, pregnancy hormones or not. She explained that the 3 months of silence had been partly due to her difficult final trimester, but mostly because she had been ashamed and unsure how to make amends. The birth of her daughter had clarified things. She didn't want Lily to grow up watching her mother treat people the way she had treated me. I can't promise I'll change overnight. The letter concluded, 32 years of patterns won't disappear with one apology. But I want to try to be better. For Lily, for you, and for myself. If you're willing, I'd like to start rebuilding our relationship, with proper boundaries this time. I read the letter 3 times, emotions swirling. There was hope, certainly, but also caution. One beautiful apology didn't erase a lifetime of boundary violations. But it was a start, perhaps the first genuine acknowledgement I had ever received from my sister. I called Dear Martinez for an emergency session, bringing the letter with me. She helped me process my complex feelings and develop a plan for cautious re-engagement with appropriate boundaries in place. What would a healthy relationship with your sister look like? She asked. Not the relationship you've had or the one you think you should have, but one that would actually feel good and safe to you? That question guided my response to Amanda. I wrote back, thanking her for the apology and congratulating her on Lily's birth. I suggested meeting at a neutral location, a park near her house, the following weekend. I was clear about my boundaries. I would need to see consistent respect for my space and autonomy, not just promises. Our first meeting was awkward but positive. Amanda brought Lily, a tiny bundle with our father's eyes. We sat on a park bench, making tentative conversation about her birth experience and my recent promotion at work. There were long silences and moments of tension, but also glimpses of connection we hadn't shared in years. My mother was struggling more with the new dynamic. When she joined us for a second park meeting, she vacillated between joy over her granddaughter and discomfort with the changed relationship between her daughters. She had not yet offered her own apology, though Amanda had apparently been working on her to understand the gravity of what they had done. Mom still doesn't really get it, Amanda admitted during our third meeting, this time at a cafe. She keeps saying we had good intentions as if that makes everything okay. It took you 3 months and giving birth to understand, I pointed out. Maybe she needs more time too. Slowly, we established new protocols. Amanda would text before calling. Visits to each other's homes would be arranged in advance. We would meet in public places until trust was rebuilt. Each small boundary respected was a brick in the foundation of a healthier relationship. 2 weeks after our first meeting, I received a tearful call from my mother. Amanda had refused to let her into her house without calling first, citing the lessons she had learned from violating my boundaries. She said I needed to respect her space the way I should have respected yours, my mother said, sounding bewildered. Is this some kind of coordinated attack? It's called healthy boundaries, Mom. I explained gently, and it's something we should all practice with each other. Whether from seeing both daughters taking the same position or simply from the shock of being on the receiving end of boundary enforcement, my mother began to soften. Her apology, when it finally came, was less direct than Amanda's but nonetheless sincere. She had realized, she said, that her enabling of Amanda's behavior had damaged both her daughters in different ways. 6 months after the baby shower incident, I invited them both to my apartment for the first time, a carefully planned brunch with clear start and end times. Watching my mother hold Lily in the living room that had once been the site of such hurt felt surreal but healing. The visit went smoothly, with both of them taking careful note of my space, asking before using anything in the kitchen, and leaving exactly when agreed. As they were preparing to leave, Amanda paused at the door. "You know, I was so angry when you changed the locks," she admitted. It felt like such a harsh statement. "It was a necessary one," I replied. "Sometimes you have to create physical boundaries when emotional ones aren't being respected." She nodded thoughtfully. "I get that now. Actually, I've been thinking about what you said about boundaries being expressions of respect. I've started using that with Derek when his parents drop by unannounced." That small moment of connection, my sister applying a lesson I had painfully learned, felt like the first green shoot after a long winter. The journey hasn't been perfect. There have been slips and old patterns occasionally re-emerging. My mother still sometimes treats Amanda's needs as more urgent than mine. Amanda still occasionally displays entitlement. But the difference now is that I have the tools and confidence to address these moments directly rather than swallowing my feelings. My apartment is truly mine again. A sanctuary rather than a resource for others to use at will. The new locks remain, symbols of my right to control access to my space and by extension my life. The broken butterfly from my father has been replaced by a new glass sculpture, not the same, but beautiful in its own way, like the new relationship I'm building with my family. If this experience has taught me anything, it's that setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's essential for genuine connection. Real love has room for mutual respect. Real family supports each person's individuality rather than demanding conformity. To anyone watching who struggles with family boundaries, you're not alone. Your space, both physical and emotional, matters. Standing up for yourself isn't betraying your family. It's inviting them into a healthier relationship. It took changing my locks to finally open the door to authentic connection with my family. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with loved ones? Share your experience in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe for more journeys of personal growth and family healing. And remember, sometimes the most loving thing you can do, for yourself and others, is to draw a clear line. Thank you for listening and take care of your boundaries.